AI is largely seen as a private good that is controlled by a really small number of these centralized monoliths. I think what AI crypto offers from a philosophical standpoint is a path towards AI that is owned by no one, a path where AI is seen more as a public utility than that of a private good.
This episode is brought to you by Stand with Crypto. More than 50 million Americans own crypto. These are entrepreneurs, innovators, and job creators who are deeply invested in building a strong America that dominates this emerging tech sector. Stand with Crypto works to mobilize the crypto community around issues and elections. Find out more and see where candidates in your area stand at standwithcrypto.org. All right, the worlds of crypto and AI are increasingly coming together as the race in AI heats up, and I'm excited to have on with us today Nick Emmons, Allora Labs co-founder on Coinage. Nick, so good to see you, man.
Yeah, thanks for having me.
It's exciting because, there are a lot of AI, blockchain projects in the space getting off the ground now. You guys have raised a pretty considerable amount of money, more than $30 million, to build out what you're doing at Allora. But maybe some of our viewers aren't so familiar with it, so we can start with just kind of a quick background on what Allora is all about.
Yeah, so I think a good way to think about what we're building is basically a collective intelligence network or a kind of self-improving decentralized AI network. We're trying to create a network where different people can run different ML models and have them learn off of one another and sort of collectively optimize different ML objectives to create this more intelligent source of networked AI or collective AI, as opposed to the kind of paradigm of AI today where different models exist, but they exist in these isolated silos from one another. We're trying to enable models to come together and realize this sort of collective intelligence network, because I think that's a way to create one more performant or intelligent AI and also significantly accelerate the rate of innovation in AI by creating this sort of intelligence marketplace on top of models directly.
Yeah, I guess in terms of exploring that a little bit, and we're going to dig into the different approaches from all the big tech companies right now, including Zuck's Meta, and maybe being a little bit more open source than some of the others out there. But when it comes to the problem that Allora is looking to solve, specifically, if you guys weren't in the space, what is kind of that one key problem that you point out to everyone in a nutshell and just saying, look, this is kind of the main problem if we don't add this to the space?
Yeah, I think it's that of siloed machine intelligence, or that's the sort of label we've given it. Today, there's a bunch of different ML models that exist, but they all live in these silos. I can't take 10 models and sort of jam them together to create this new form of intelligence that represents the sum of the intelligence of all of those underlying models. And this creates this really lopsided market where enterprises with access to massive amounts of compute and data will constantly be building the best models. And our view of the future is that it's not one that is dominated by a single model that is the best in every domain or context. It's one where there's many models that are better in certain domains, worse in others, and it's a more diverse set of models. And so we're trying to solve this problem of there being a sort of suboptimal competitive marketplace today for intelligence and for new models, new model creators to kind of bring their innovations to market.
Yeah, I guess, obviously it's still kind of early days in terms of people getting comfortable with what any of these large language models are even going to be able to unlock. The idea of kind of running different agents on, all kinds of different platforms. It was interesting, too, because Mark Zuckerberg was just talking about this in terms of why they've gone the open source route. We have a little bit of a clip from what he was just talking about in front of NVIDIA's CEO. Just want to play what he shared and get your thoughts on the other side. Take a listen.
I don't think that there's just going to be like one AI model, right? I mean, this is something that some of the other companies in the industry, they're like, it's like they're building like one central agent and yeah, we'll have the Meta AI assistant that you can use, but a lot of our vision is that we want to empower all the people who use our products to basically create agents for themselves.
So Gen Z Zuck being very friendly to the space now. He's a new man. He's changed. I mean, what do you make of that, their approach? And then I guess, again, kind of how Allora might fit into that idea.
Yeah, I think I haven't seen that clip before, but I think we're very aligned clearly in how we think about AI. I don't think there's going to be a single model or in his nomenclature, a single agent that is dominant in every domain in the future. I think open source AI is a piece of this. I think that helps expedite the rate of innovation or sort of how other model creators can leverage existing advances made by players like Meta, et cetera, in open sourcing their models. But I think there's a sort of, I guess, broader category of decentralized AI that isn't a full overlap with open source AI that is going to be important to realize as well. I don't think like the best models in the world today are yet open source. Obviously, what Meta is doing is really exciting. Their models are really great. There's other open source models that are getting there, but I don't think open source AI is a necessary prerequisite for realizing decentralized AI. Although I do see open source as like a very important catalyst for realizing this kind of more accessible with broader participation category of model creators and ML contributions in the world.
Yeah, I mean, it sounds like, I mean, I guess, right, in terms of building out the technology and the idea of open source versus not in decentralized maneuvers to build all this out, it sounds like a lot of it has more to do with the creation or, the building side than it does maybe the consumer side in knowing how all of this stuff is going to function. I mean, in terms of the value capture there, what's kind of like the business model or economics, dare I say tokenomics, of what Allora is trying to build in, I guess, closing both sides from the consumer and the building side of the technology?
Yeah, I see decentralized networks in general as useful ways to turn different, potentially nebulous resources into more like tangible assets or digital commodities. I think Bitcoin is essentially commoditized energy. And in doing that, you've created the shortest path possible for someone who has access to excess power, energy, and capturing value from it. What we're trying to do with Allora in building this collective intelligence network is commoditize intelligence itself. That's sort of our nebulous resource, if you will. So instead of today's paradigm where I, as a model creator, need to, one, build a really good model and then figure out how to bring it to market. I have to productize it, build up business functions, achieve distribution, et cetera. Allora offers the shortest path possible from developing a really useful performance model and capturing value from it, because you're just hooking that model up to this marketplace instantiated specifically for rewarding useful intelligence and then capturing value based on how useful your model is. And so it enables this sort of new type of AI company to emerge where the entire company or the entire initiative can be captured in model development and model improvement, as opposed to these confounding factors that are model development and model improvement plus distribution, productization, building out of business functions, et cetera. And so that's sort of what we're trying to capture from an economic perspective, is creating the most efficient or optimal market for intelligence that can exist. And then on the, I guess, consumer side or the demand side, a really key focus for us in the kind of near term is focusing on applications that are especially applicable or viable for crypto and AI today. I think crypto is predominantly a financial innovation. It's found most, if not all, of its product market fit in these various financial domains. And I also think in financial domains is where AI more broadly is most mature or battle tested. And so we're particularly focused on enabling novel AI-powered DeFi or DeFi-adjacent primitives in this sort of kind of near-term of demand-side build-out. And so that's where a lot of our focus is, on the consumer or demand side.
Yeah, I want to get into some of those DeFi primitives in a sec, but I guess before we get there, it's also unique, the path that you took, I think, in terms of the company itself or the project itself. since you guys raised and built out things in the NFT space before you guys kind of settled on what you're doing now under the brand Upshot. And it is kind of interesting to see the way that a lot of this technology is overlapping. You think about deepfakes and the idea of provenance on chain and kind of what could be various solutions to problems that are only just being created. But when it comes to your path, Nick, and the idea of shifting from NFTs over to where you are now, there's been a lot of bubble talk about AI, kind of the same bubble talk about crypto. Obviously, here we are, proven not to be a bubble. But when you dig into kind of where we're at, what's your pushback on anyone who says AI is in a bubble? Like, how do you kind of, I guess, measure where we're at in this evolution of the technology and where we have to go? And I guess we can get into your path, because I assume you landed on it's not a bubble, but kind of how do you walk through that to people who are new to the space?
I think cycles are a feature of markets more than they are a bug. We can call them bubbles in the sort of exacerbated instances of cycles, but I think cycles are like intrinsic to their existing leverage in financial markets. And so cycles will always exist over different time frames, to what levels of kind of severity will differ across industries and moments in time. But I think that like maybe we are in an AI hype cycle right now, and maybe we will have a kind of downturn in the AI market. But I think that applies to all industries and all markets. You get that when you introduce leverage into a financial system. And so I think it's good because it enables us to pull some of that future value to the present and lay that infrastructure that maybe wouldn't be sort of viable from an economic standpoint if our sort of market growth was a straight line. A lot of the .com bubble enabled us to lay that early foundation for what enabled the next generation post-.com bubble applications to exist that wouldn't have been viable if the growth of the internet was a straight line. I think we've seen similar things play out in crypto. We'll see similar things play out in AI. And so I think kind of principally, cycles aren't a bad thing. They're a good thing for bringing the future perspective value of an industry to the present in order to leverage that future value to lay important foundations that maybe otherwise wouldn't be viable.
Well, I'm not going to ask you to pick a side and wage a war between NFTs and AI in terms of which one you believe more in now, but I think it is kind of unique for any founder who's pivoted, right? The idea of being in that space. Like, what was the journey to go from, hey, maybe we should do this instead? Like, how did you land on maybe turning what you were building on at Upshot to now kind of at Allora? What was that journey like?
Yeah, so when we started with building AI-powered NFT appraisals, it was really on this broader mission that is still sort of the broader mission we're on today of creating more efficient financial infrastructure for long-tail assets. NFTs are just a long-tail asset. Through the last NFT hype cycle, that was largely like PFPs, generative art, stuff like that. But AI in a sort of decentralized financial system is a really useful tool for now making what would otherwise be highly inefficient or illiquid asset types more liquid or viable. And so that's sort of what we were doing there, even if it was focused on NFTs specifically. What kind of led us to the question is we had been building really early AI-powered crypto infrastructure, largely targeted at NFTs. And we found these kind of inefficiencies in bringing AI-powered crypto infrastructure to market as a sort of centralized model creator or AI company. And we identified this sort of need in the market for creating a more competitive environment for intelligence itself, such that the next Upshot doesn't have to iterate on all these confounding variables with regard to distribution, go to market, these things that don't align with the optimal production of intelligence or artificial intelligence for those verticals, and instead be able to more directly focus on model development and model improvement and contributing to this collective intelligence network that the consumers of the Upshot appraisals could just tap into in a decentralized way, and scale the sort of diversity and types of verticals that AI could apply to within the crypto space significantly that way.
Well, it sounds like you're already moving on now to one of those use cases you kind of teased just a little bit ago in terms of applications in DeFi. So I want to get your take on kind of the next short-term use case of some of that shared knowledge using Allora, what it looks like, but then also ask one last question in terms of a longer-tailed view of where we are going with AI. But first, just kind of what you see planned around DeFi and kind of some of those primitives that you're excited to roll out and when we should expect to see them.
Yeah, so I think it's still aligned with this idea of AI being this incredibly deflationary technology that can drive efficiency to the kind of long tail of markets. So a lot of the stuff we've been supporting on the application side to date has been kind of related to prediction markets. So like price prediction markets, these US election prediction markets, using AI as a means to make these long tail markets more efficient and more accurate is, I think, a huge design space that gets unlocked as we bring machine intelligence closer to crypto. And I also think we've seen such a kind of rapid progression of DeFi over the past 4 years at this point, because you have this environment for like highly composable, tightly scoped financial building blocks that can be combined and improved upon in a decentralized and permissionless way. The problem has been that the kind of expressiveness of the computer, of the technology backing those things is still like inherently primitive. And so I think what AI will do to DeFi is a kind of comprehensive leveling up of the how expressive and how exotic DeFi primitives can be. Talking about kind of more dynamic or capital efficient lending systems, more robust kind of risk hedging systems, expanding the universe of assets that can be financialized to begin with, really into this long tail of assets again. And so I think AI is really going to touch ultimately every piece of DeFi and making it more efficient and more expressive.
Yeah, I think it's interesting to think about just in terms of automation already existing in financial markets, in the stock market, and the idea of automized trading, high frequency traders. And that's one thing. But then if you turn everything else into a market, as Polymarket is trying to do in terms of betting on any event, then suddenly if you tokenize everything, you've got a market for everything. And yes, the idea of automating some of that does start to look very interesting, or perhaps very scary, Nick, if I may speak honestly. And there are a lot of fears that people are, publicizing right now about where this is going and how quickly it accelerates, Elon Musk included, in terms of saying that, look, humanity is kind of screwed here. I mean, you've been in the AI space for a while. So, I mean, I would ask you, what do you see as kind of the end all, like all paths lead to this one future? Is it as dire as maybe some in the space make it sound?
I think we're still gathering data on that as a people. I think we'll see how it plays out. What I think we can do is mitigate certain risks, and I think there's a far higher chance of some dire outcome to this if we continue down the path we're on today, where AI is largely seen as a private good that is controlled by a really small number of these centralized monoliths. I think what AI crypto offers from a philosophical standpoint and from a practical standpoint, frankly, is a path towards AI that is owned by no one, a path where AI is seen more as a public utility than that of a private good. Similar to the early days of the internet, when we faced a similarly dire trajectory potentially in different centralized enterprises trying to capture the internet or realize the internet as these kind of private instantiations, intranets. And it was ultimately the internet being brought to life and proliferated as a public utility that enabled us to realize the types of kind of like permissionless work and widespread accessibility / innovation that we've seen over the past several decades. And I think something similar is happening with AI, and all of this work and resources being poured into this intersection of crypto and AI and decentralized AI more generally, that will enable us to hopefully avoid some of those more dire outcomes if it remains a private good owned by a small number of enterprises.
Yeah, it's been. I think watching all the big giants battle for that, including Zuck, as we showed earlier, and Elon Musk, kind of going at it from two different approaches and potentially continuing to go fist to fist as the year progresses. It's exciting to watch. For you guys, though, at Allora, Nick, just to wrap up, obviously, full disclosure, the Coinage validator team has been in full force trying to support in what you guys are doing. And I think it was just a little bit ago that testnet v2 was out there. So in terms of the roadmap for the rest of the year, what should people look forward to? What's the progress on kind of what comes next? And give our viewers maybe a look ahead to all that.
Yeah, so as you said, testnet v2 went out sometime last month. We're making some additional upgrades or improvements to the system now, and sort of a path towards bringing the network live to mainnet. We're continuing to do a bunch of work on the demand side or the application side, and enabling net new use cases or applications to be built on this decentralized source of collective intelligence. And then a lot of focus is going to be placed on continuing to grow that supply side of the network as well, onboarding the top ML data science talent in the world to contribute models and sort of realize this robust intelligence marketplace that we're trying to build with Allora. And so, yeah, it's a lot of exciting stuff coming over the quarter ahead, and yeah, a lot of work to do.
Yeah, but it's exciting regardless to see a bunch of different projects in a bunch of different spaces. I like the metaphor in terms of an abstraction layer for intelligence, just as Bitcoin is one for energy. And we've recently been talking a lot about Akash and an abstraction layer for compute as well. But all of these projects and marketplaces coming together. Nick Emmons, the co-founder at Allora Labs, thanks so much for coming on, man. You got to keep us posted as you roll all this out.
Yeah, thanks for having me.